start to realize this institution that I love, that I gave so many years to, that you gave so many years to, and I say that humbly because I did far less than so many. I did my one little thing that as part of a bigger effort over 20 years. But this institution is going sideways. It doesn't, and you hear time and time again.
Which institution?
The Department of Defense, the military, the Army, pick your service. And it started with a central question, the book. Would I recommend my kids join the Army today or the military today? And that used to be an open and shut case for me. It used to be absolutely hell yeah. Like, I want my kids to have the kind of ethos where they would. And we've got a blended family of 5 boys and 2 girls, so that's a real question. Oldest is 14, youngest is 7. Like, they're not that far away from having the opportunity to make that decision. Would I recommend that? And it used to be, of course I would. And over the last couple of years, it became clear, like, would I? I don't know. And you talk to more and more guys, and they're having the same, they're either a hell no, or they're saying, yeah, for the first time in my life, I'm in the family business. It was my dad, my grandfather, they all served, and I'm second guessing whether I want my kids to. And so the book kind of helped me figure that out. And the last chapter of the book is a letter to my boys about whether I would want them to serve. And I can lay that out, but I didn't write that chapter until the end. So I wrote the whole book, and then I was like, okay, I want to look at the depth of what's happening to our warriors, because the book isn't just how the military went woke. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of those examples, mm-hmm. and we feature them prominently on Fox, and you've seen them, and they're just the nonsense. The deeper question is, how did the military allow itself to go woke? How did our general class, how did our military academies, how did military leaders who are expected to live by an ethos and a code, they're in the job of meritocracy and lethality, of excellence, of no excuses, of equality and unity, not equity and diversity is ours. The dumbest phrase on planet Earth in the military is our diversity is our strength. It's our unity is what unites us, our unity of effort, our ability to say, yes, we're different, but we come together as a team to accomplish a mission. So I spent the better part of a year and a half talking to vets. And not just vets, but connecting through a network of a lot of guys I know. I host my show on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in New York. So I've got Saturday afternoon wide open. And I spent, for months, my Saturdays just on the phone, off the record, anonymously with guys in service. So senior enlisted, junior enlisted, junior officers, senior officers, all branches, MOSs, eras, but mostly guys in right now, generals, privates. And all the same themes came out. Standards are dropping. The woke stuff is everywhere. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I heard that all the time, mm-hmm. Eggshells. I'm a commander, I walk on eggshells. I train commanders. They're walking on eggshells. They're afraid of one misstep on one identification or one gender thing or one racial thing or one trans thing. And the priorities are upside down on what the units are focusing on. And every single one of those distractions means we're less good at our job. Which is supposed to be close with and destroy the enemy on behalf of our nation and bring our boys home. That's all I care about. That's what I want a military focused on. And so, yeah, I tell a few of my own stories in the book, but the book's not about me at all.
How do you think that this is happening?
Well, it's a long story. I think it's because they're ideologues who want to bring a meritocracy to heel. That's where I think it starts. I think you have politicians who don't want to tolerate an institution. First, they want to use it to tinker. And then they also don't want to tolerate an institution that's antithetical to their social experiments. Because the military, the book lays this out. Of course, like the integration of the military racially was a huge success. It was a huge success because black men and Hispanic men and others can perform just as well as white guys in any capacity that they're given. So the reality of life reinforced that the bigotry we saw on the outside should not be tolerated inside the military, and the military did a great job doing that. But now we're pushing boundaries on lots of different levels that are different than that, because men and women are different, because being transgendered in the military causes complications and differences. And the book kind of lays out the common arguments that those on the left or others make, which are baked in social justice. So it started, we saw it under Clinton with the tinkering of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the reasons for those changes. And I talked to some of the people involved in when that was changed. But it really started to accelerate under Obama. And you saw it with You saw the trans stuff come at the end of the Obama administration. You saw the women in combat come at the end of the Obama administration. It's because they looked around at the bureaucracies that they controlled in Washington, and the one that was that they didn't control. The Obama spent a disproportionate amount of time focusing on the Pentagon. They were skeptical of leadership and eventually brought in political appointees and generals who would do their bidding the way they wanted, which, as you know, in a top-down organization changes the ethos of the whole thing. So the book is meant to pull the whole curtain back, mostly from Obama forward, and explain how the army that I enlisted in, or that I swore an oath in 2001 and was commissioned in 2003, looks a lot different than the army of today because we're focused on a lot of the wrong things. I mean, you know this. You could talk about it all day, I bet.
We could. I'm trying to organize my thoughts here and figure out what rabbit holes to go down. But I mean, they've been wildly successful in morphing the military into this whatever you want to call it. And I do want to. Do you want to talk about? I don't want to forget about having your kids join the military.
Sure. Yep.
Maybe we end with that.
Sure.
Because I have a lot of thoughts on that too. But I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I think about this all the time. I mean, you know, you watch the show. I've had active duty guys on. I've had the most badass American warriors that we've ever produced on this show, and everybody says the same thing. They don't all say it on camera because it doesn't. We don't always go into that, but I do ask them. You know, all of them. Like, how is it? How is it in there? You know, especially the guys that just got out. They're all disgusted. They're all demoralized.
Totally.
I feel like the gas really got turned on when the defund the police movement happened. I knew it was going to bleed in because I thought the defund the police, I was like, this isn't about this shit. They want to rid the LE agencies of the old guard because they all think alike. They do a damn good job. And so let's destroy it and rebuild it with a new mindset. And that happened. I think that happened. Do you think it happened?
Yes, I do. I mean, if you look at the back cover of the book, it says, I joined the Army to fight extremists in 2001. 20 years later, that same Army labeled me one.
Yeah.
So I got out because, and I can tell the story or not, but I was deemed an extremist because of a tattoo by my National Guard unit in Washington, D.C. And my orders were revoked to guard the Biden inauguration. But all of this, so you have what happened with George Floyd.
What a punishment.
I know. It's actually, you put it that way, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. You know, but you had the George Floyd riots, and then I was also in the DC Guard during what happened in front of the White House. You remember the insurrection that no one calls an insurrection outside the White House when they, burned the church down and got to the gates of the White House. I was there the second night through the fifth night of all of that. I was an 04 major holding a riot shield because they didn't have enough guys. So we were just out there doing our thing and explain a little bit about that. That happens, then January 6th happens. And both of those moments become pretenses for the DOD with political appointees who've long since been burrowed in and generals who are all in for the politically correct agenda. They maybe kept their head down during Trump because he didn't want to hear about it. Guys like Milley, guys like Austin, they were right there waiting in the wings, ready to go. And once the combination of Floyd and January 6th happened, they went all in on DEI and CRT and transformation, focusing on patriot extremism. That's we talk all about that in the book. Gadsden flags are signs of radicalism. Get the bumper sticker off your car. A Jerusalem cross tattoo, which is just a Christian symbol.
Is that the
this is the one?
Is that the tattoo?
Yep, right here. This one is what got me disinvited, I'd never had orders revoked before. I mean, listen, it's a standard deal. You remember after January 6th, everyone was in Washington, D.C. Like Nancy Pelosi had the parking garages full of National Guardsmen. Mm-hmm. The fence was up. I was going. And my commander called me a day before tepidly and was like, Major, you can just stand down. We don't need you. We're good. And I'm like, what do you mean everybody's there? He's like, no, he couldn't tell me. And then, of course, when I was writing the book, I reached out to somebody in the unit who could confirm with 99.9% certainty because he was in the meetings and on the emails. Nope, someone inside the DC Guard trolled your social media, found a tattoo, used it as an excuse to call you a white nationalist, an extremist, and you were specifically by name orders revoked to guard the inauguration because you were considered a potential threat.
How is that? It's a cross.
It's a Christian symbol. That's all it is. There's a lot of guys I got a Christian symbol here. I got, because it wasn't about that. It was about, I don't know, I'm too conservative? Is it because I'm a Trump supporter? Is it because I was a reporter on January 6th?
So they just didn't want you there. And so that was the...
Maybe I worked at Fox. Maybe that's what it was. They had decided Pete Hegseth is not qualified to guard the inauguration of a Democrat president, which is ridiculous because I volunteered to go to Afghanistan under Barack Obama. I'm no Democrat, but I was hopeful the surge in Afghanistan might work, and I volunteered to go in 2011, 2012. So it's never been about, for guys like you and me, it's never been about Republicans and Democrats. It's been about the Republic. And it's all been put into question in everyone's mind. And so there's a chance to course correct it, but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it, and that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, I don't know, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken. And you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
I mean, you don't think we need to gut the entire institution? You think this is just coming from the top down?
I think right now my assessment based on talking to, is that it's a top-down, bottom-up problem. Is that you've got top-down political generals who've gained rank by playing by all the wrong rules that cater to the ideologues in Washington, D.C. And so they'll do any social justice, gender, climate, extremism crap because it gets them checked to the next level and gets them closer to the political appointees who don't know anything about the military really, other than they want a new first here and a new first there, and can we get the first trans this or whatever, that just nonsense. And then now you have a junior corps, which, listen, their incentive structure, whether it was in university or at service academies or just coming through college, is belief in these things. That diversity is our strength, that equity, that the standards could be racially biased, that showing up on time is a social construct, all these. So if you spend enough time with those two things meeting, you could have a wholesale takeover of the Defense Department. I do think there's still a core of mostly silent. They also pushed out a lot of vaccine folks because of the vaccine, obviously.
That's
another one. Like,
I think that was
about a purge.
Engineered as well.
That's a purge of people. That's a purge of people of conscience. If you have enough of a conscience, whether it's faith, belief, or whatever, purge, out. Patriot extremism, purge, out. So there was a big push of a lot of those people in the middle out. I still think, and I know enough guys and talked to enough who said, hey, I want to be in for the right reasons. I know what's wrong. It's jacked up. If I say something, I'm canned. But in a new environment, I think there's still a core there that's not. And here's the challenge: in Battle for the American Mind, my other book was about the state of education in America, which is total. Government schools are, this as well as anybody, horror shows. But if you want to get out of them, you can. You can move. You can homeschool. You can. You got options for the most part. School. We only have one Defense Department. What's the option? Abandon it? And so if every patriot abandons it, what does it look like? And how is it utilized in the future in ways that are far more nefarious than foreign wars, where we get entangled and we end up trying to nation build for 20 years?
I feel like that's how we fix it. You abandon it.
Really?
Yup. I know you probably think I'm crazy.
I would.
We have a Second Amendment. We have more gun owners than anything else in this country. Yeah, I know we need planes and tech and satellites and Space Force and all the Navy and all this shit, but when's the last time we actually went to war to fight for our freedom?
We won't even defend our southern border.
Should we have been in Iraq?
I was a huge proponent of it at the time, but in retrospect, absolutely not.
So was I. I don't think we should have been there.
Yeah.
I think that was all for Cheney and KBR, Halliburton. I think we were in Afghanistan for way too. I don't even think we're defending the country. Like, why the fuck are people even signing up to go to war for what? For what? Whose war? It's not our fucking war. We're funding the Taliban $40 to $87 million
A week.
a week.
A week.
They run the government over there. They're making passports for these guys, legitimate passports for these guys. They fly them all over South America and Central America. They funnel up through the southern border. You know, it's not a fucking conspiracy. It's real. And like, what are we going to use our military for? For Ukraine?
No.
So why would anybody sign up? What are you defending? What are you defending?
It's a great question. I mean, I think and that's why I reserved judgment to say I want to know what the world looks like in 4 years when you're 18.
And if they do lose all the patriots, they have to change something because they have
Or
no
do
one.
they? Or do they? Or
Maybe
would
you're
they?
right.
Or would
Maybe
they
you're right.
conscript?
Maybe you're right.
Or would they bring in pathway to citizenship conscript? I mean, I think DC will find a way, and it may be ugly, and so I share all of your skepticisms about that. I've been a recovering neocon for 6 years now. Like the foolishness with which we ricocheted around the world, intervening, think it was in our best interest when really we just overturned the table and created something worse in almost every single scenario, has led to the hubris of the Pentagon is that they want to now tell other countries how to do counterinsurgency based on what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, are you kidding me? So you really have learned nothing. Okay, nothing. So yeah, you're right. The trust there that our political leaders or our generals would have our best interests in mind is totally broken. It's totally broken. I acknowledge that completely. And the last thing I want is my son deploying to the Donbass to defend Eastern Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I'm with you too. At the same time, I'm fearful of what happens when the institution gets abandoned completely. And maybe it feels like the public school argument, like, hey, if we take all the Christians and people of faith out of public schools, then they're really going to go, yeah, but you got to save your kid, right? And I'm going to save my kid. And that's the view. It's just there isn't an alternative right now to the United States military. Mm-hmm. There just isn't. And I don't want to lose patriotic influence over that. So my prayer, because if Donald Trump doesn't win and Kamala Harris is the commander in chief, what's happening inside our military is going to go on another level of warp speed. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see even more guys and gals retiring, and even more of the DEI woke focus, and it's going to continue to spiral. If Trump does win and goes at it, I think it might be our last sort of chance to save this institution and turn it back to what it was, because it is a top-down organization. You put a SecDef in there who's focused on all the right things, get rid of all the things that are described in the book, and focus on warfighting, lethality, and training and standards, real standards, not equity, but equality. Mm-hmm. You could do it. There's still the core there. But I share what has Washington shown us in the last 20 years that we should trust them with how they'll use our young men? It's fair. Trump tried to use them on the border and they shut him down.
Our power grid's fucked. Our border's fucked. Our education system's fucked. Everything's fucked. That's the way it feels. Everything is fucked. And we're shipping all of our money overseas. And we should be, do you know anything about the power grid? Do you know how bad it is?
Super vulnerable. I mean, one EMP, one of the right strikes, and we're what happens when we're months without power?
I don't think they even need to do an EMP. We don't need, China produces all of our transformers, all of our solar, all of our wind, everything. And we don't even check it for malware or Trojan horses or any of these type of viruses and even FBI Director Ray came out and said, yeah, they're in our grid and they're in our water treatment plants. And all they have to do is flip the switch. But we ship 175 billion thus far to Ukraine. But
no, well, and Bin Laden's son is now in Afghanistan. He's married to the daughter of Mullah Omar and the daughter of Zarqawi. And they're, when the FBI director is saying that the dashboard is flashing red and smoking, he's not doing it because he's doing it because he's covering his ass. He knows something's coming at some point. And
But even on top of all the DEI stuff in the military, I don't even think I think that's just one aspect of the war on warriors. I mean, just before we started talking on the show, we were having a side conversation about the Biden Four, the Blackwater guys,
Yep.
Eddie Gallagher,
Yep.
Goldstein. The latest one, I don't know if you're aware of this, Brad Geary. Do you know who Brad Geary is? He's a naval captain. He was in charge of Naval Special Warfare Training Center. He was the guy that was in charge when Mullen, the SEAL recruit who was in Buds, died.
Yep.
And now they're pinning his ass to the wall, and it's straight lies. Just for an example, they are blaming it on the training cadre, and it was too hard, and the medical checks were wrong, and da 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 da. But they did I believe it was three separate investigations to cover up. They just kept reinvestigating it until the facts were gone. And the facts were that they found a cooler or some type of a box full of vials of testosterone, human growth hormone, and Viagra, from Pakistan. And when he died, his heart was 63% larger than most. I think he was 23. Was he 23 at the time? But they had all of that removed out of the investigation. I should connect you guys.
Absolutely.
But that's the latest one. That's Eddie Gallagher. They tried him for murdering an ISIS fighter.
Yep.
They tried him for murdering an ISIS fighter.
Correct.
And I was a SEAL, and I asked because I thought he was guilty. I thought he was guilty because everybody was saying that he was guilty. I was calling my buddies that were still in, hey, what's up with this Gallagher guy? Is this real? Like, what? I don't see the problem here. And they're like, oh, man, dude, you don't want to. It's bad. They have the videos. It was bad. They I think it was Green, went around to all the SEAL teams and briefed them saying that they had video, the proof that Eddie killed this guy in a, I don't know, whatever fashion. But nobody ever saw it. Turns out in court, it never came up. They just fucking lied to the entire SEAL community to pin this guy's ass to the wall. A lot of people still hate him.
You had his lawyer, Tim Parlatore,
Yeah.
on your show. Without the kind of legal defense that he got. I mean, they got the other guy to admit that he killed him in the last day of trial.
Yeah, it wasn't even him.
Wasn't even him. So
You didn't even kill the ISIS fighter.
So it's Eddie Gallagher or Clint Lawrence or the Raven 23 guys who
And those
had on the
guys
show.
Nick Slatton was going to prison for life.
For life.
And the other three, I believe it was 35 years. And they deleted the drone footage that proved their innocence in court. That's another one. Hey, let's just retry them until we get a guilty
A couple of them didn't even pull the trigger in the actual incident. It's Matt Goldstein's the other one I'm thinking of, a Green Beret. So yeah, I mean, chapter 10 and 11 are more lethality, less lawyers, and the laws of war for winners, talking about exactly this. And this is why, I was proud to be a part of, in a small way, behind the scenes, with all of those, with the pardons that came from President Trump. And what his instinct was, hey, I'm with the war fighters. Like, we sent them to do these really dangerous, dirty, difficult things that no one else would do. And then sort of like the line from A Few Good Men. And then we challenge the manner in which they do it. And even when they do it in a way we may not like or every people don't understand, rather than giving them deference or having their back or finding a way to support them, we throw them under the bus. And the Raven 23 is one of the most egregious examples of that because it was politically expedient for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden to do that. It was a gift to the Maliki government because of what, the publicity that had come out because of it. And so you have a Pentagon that starts to be complicit with that way of thinking, and it's all about advancement and covering up problems, and they don't have the backs of guys. Rules of engagement are a huge problem, as you know.
That's another one.
It's a big one.
I mean, I remember I was working for the agency at the time, and we were in Helmand Province, and the Marines were getting ready to do this big push through Marjad. Do you remember that?
I remember that, yep.
We were co-located, right? They didn't know, but we were right alongside them. And I remember when the ROEs came out for that under the Obama administration, it was, if they shoot at you and drop their weapon, you cannot return fire.
In a war.
And I was like, man, like, you just cut these guys' legs out right out from under them. Like, nobody's even, what are we doing? Like, you just put the fear of God in these guys that if they have to do their job and defend the country, that they're going to go to prison for the rest of their life. I mean, they demoralized the entire battalion that was doing that offensive push. And I mean, it's just, this has been a long process.
That's why I say the rules of war for winners, because why are we fighting an enemy? Why have we spent the last 20 years fighting enemies that don't abide by rules at all? And these are rules written by like dudes in cloakrooms in Europe after World War I because they thought that they could fight polite wars in the future amongst European nations. When we live now in a world in 2024 where all of our enemies use all of their advantages against us, ignoring all the rules of war, and then expecting us to play by all those very same rules, where we're our largest critiquers in the middle of the process. And then we wonder why the war never ends and why it perpetuates itself, and then why we're throwing our own guys in jail. Because we've written rules that are impossible, that are written for us to lose, that are written for our guys to be in handcuffs. I mean, I got a similar brief. We had a JAG officer, brief our platoon in Iraq in 2005 in Baghdad prior to one of our first missions, and it was just standard ROE briefing. He's like, so you see a man in the road and he's carrying an RPG, but it's not yet pointed at you. And it was, an enemy. Can you shoot? My guys are like, hell yeah. They're like, no, you cannot. But you cannot shoot until he's pointing that weapon at you. And I just remember walking out, and clear as day, I remember walking out of that briefing, pulling my platoon together and being like, guys, we're not doing that. Like if you see an enemy and they're engaged before he's able to point his weapon at you and shoot, we're going to have your back. And that comes back down to commanders. And I felt like I could say that because I knew I had commanders echelons above me who would have our backs in that process. And the New York Times and the left and Democrats would say, all they do is take one incident and yell war criminal. They never actually understand the context of what happened. I mean, I got the same income on Eddie Gallagher. Don't touch this story. I talked to CLF, don't touch it. Guilty is all hell, guilty is all. And I just looked more and more, same with Clint Lorenz, same with Matt Goldstein, and the Raven 23 guys.
What is Matt Goldstein?
Matt Goldstein's a Green Beret. I can't remember all the particulars of it right now, but he was involved, a guy they had rolled up, who had been involved in killing Americans, then had gotten released, and his sources were going to be killed, and he laid in basically an ambush on the guy when he was released and killed him because they knew that their sources were all going to be killed. Forgive me if that's wrong, something along those lines. He's probably going to watch and text me and be like, you're an idiot. So I'm sure I got some part of that wrong. He's one of the smartest, most patriotic guys you'll ever meet. I mean, you should have him on the show sometime. Guys, phenomenal, like stupid level smart, PhD level.
Did he get out of it, or is he?
He got out of it. He got a pardon.
He did?
From Trump.
Nice.
And because the thing with Trump is, if his wife Julie Goldstein was on our show a number of times. She's just really articulate, really passionate. Once he sees a story and gets how it connects to something bigger, it connects to the bigger idea that we're fucking over our warfighters here. Mm-hmm. Why are we doing that? Why did we do that? Why wouldn't we back these guys up, even if they weren't perfect? And he'd call me and be like, they did some nasty, they did some tough things. These are rough guys, but he respects people that were willing to do it on behalf of the rest of us, and he's not going to throw them under the bus.